You're now watching a recap of the movie Red Notice on the channel Blue Recap. Our movie kicks off with a historical tale about the love story between Queen Cleopatra and her lover Antonius. Antonius was a sweet young man who really knew how to pick gifts. One day, he gave her 3 golden eggs. Over the years, people thought this story was nothing more than a myth. But in 1907, an Egyptian farmer stumbled upon 2 of the eggs, and until today, no one knows what happened to the 3rd egg. One of the 2 eggs is now kept in a museum in Rome, while the other was sold at an auction for an enormous amount of money. Now we head over to Rome, where we meet an agent named Das along with Agent John. The 2 of them are there because they got intel that the world's most famous thief is planning to steal the egg kept in the museum. The museum director doesn't really buy their story, and he asks them about the source of this information. When John tells him that his source is the bishop, the director laughs at him because the bishop is just a myth. But here's the twist. The director actually takes them to see the egg, and it's right there in its place. Still, John isn't convinced. He tells them the egg might already have been stolen. To prove it, he grabs a soda and pours it over the egg, and sure enough, it starts to dissolve, revealing it's a fake. Right then, security goes on full alert and locks down all the doors. And then, we notice a guy named Nolan inside the museum. The moment the doors start to close, he bolts for the exit. Of course, John goes after him because Nolan is the infamous thief. And to see why Nolan is considered the best thief in the world, just watch that chase scene and how easily he slips away from John. But John is a clever agent, so when Nolan gets back to his place in Bali with the stolen egg, he's shocked to find John and Agent Das already waiting for him inside. John starts analyzing Nolan's personality, telling him he's a rebellious thief who only steals for fun and fame. He even steals priceless paintings just to hang them in his apartment instead of selling them, like what he did with the portrait of the lady with the red hat. Nolan, of course, denies it and says, "You can't prove I stole it." "Come on, Nolan. The painting is literally hanging right there on your wall." Nolan gets arrested and John goes to place the egg in the police car. But then, we see a woman disguised as a cop swap the real egg with a fake one without anyone noticing. The next day, right before their flight, Das shocks John by revealing the egg he brought is fake. And not just that, she accuses him of being the one who stole the real egg. She tells him she checked with the FBI and they said they have no idea who he is. There's no record of anyone with his name in their files. And just like that, John gets arrested for theft and for impersonating an FBI agent. John ends up locked up in a Russian prison, and to his surprise, Nolan is in the same cell with him. Since they're now cellmates, their relationship starts to warm up a little. They talk about their work, their tricks, and of course, the 3 golden eggs. And that's when we discover that the bishop played both of them. Nolan reveals that he planned to steal the eggs in order to sell them to a wealthy Egyptian businessman. He also tells John that he knows the location of the 2nd egg, kept by a notorious arms dealer named Sato. John begs Nolan not to expose his secret about being a cop because if the prisoners find out, they'll kill him. Nolan replies, "Say no more," then immediately stands up and loudly announces to everyone in the cafeteria that John is a cop. One prisoner who hates the police jumps up and attacks John, and chaos erupts across the entire dining hall. The guards rush in and drag them both to the warden's office. But here's the twist. The warden is not just any warden. She's drop-dead gorgeous. That beautiful woman standing in front of them is none other than the bishop, the mastermind behind everything that's been happening. She explains to John that she was the one who tricked Agent Das with false intel, framing him and getting him arrested. She thanks them for the egg she already secured and casually mentions she's now going after the 2nd egg. Then she demands Nolan tell her the location of the 3rd egg in exchange for his freedom. But Nolan refuses, so she just smirks and walks away. Nolan and John are sent back to the prison, and while doing hard labor, they start planning their escape. That night, Nolan opens up to John about his past. He tells him that his father was a police officer, and one day accused him of stealing his watch. Even after his father later found the watch, he still stayed mad at Nolan and kept calling him a thief. From that day on, Nolan decided, "Fine, if you see me as a thief, then I'll really become one." The next day, the 2 put their escape plan into action. They set off a small explosion in the laundry room to create a distraction, then knock out the guards and make their way out. Just before reaching the exit, they run into a locked door that requires a guard's keycard. But John is stunned when Nolan pulls the card out of his pocket. He had stolen it during John's fight with another prisoner 2 days earlier. They then break through part of the prison wall they had been weakening during labor and dash across the yard under heavy gunfire from the guards. Finally, they reach a helicopter. John holds off the guards just long enough for Nolan to get the chopper running. And at the last second, John jumps on board right before the collapsing bridge crumbles beneath him. On the other side, we see the bishop kidnapping an FBI officer. She uses his device to send a message to Das, tipping her off that Nolan and John have escaped from prison. Meanwhile, Nolan and John reach one of Nolan's contacts, who arranges a private jet to take them straight to their next target, the second golden egg. This egg is kept inside the mansion of the arms dealer Soto, secured in a heavily guarded room. The two sneak into Soto's masquerade party, John pretending to be one of the fancy guests while Nolan blends in as a waiter. But then comes the real shock. They suddenly spot the bishop herself at the party. John goes over to talk and dance with the bishop, trying to distract her while Nolan sneaks off to the secret room to steal the egg. Soto notices John and the bishop dancing together. Overcome with jealousy, he cuts in to dance with her himself. John uses the moment to swipe Soto's phone, then slips away to join Nolan for the heist. Nolan manages to disable the security camera, and they wait for the perfect timing. When the guards switch shifts outside the secret room, right before opening the door, they realize they need Soto's fingerprint. But the glass holding the print slips and shatters. Luckily, Nolan quickly grabs a shard of glass that still has the fingerprint on it. They scan it, and boom, the vault opens. But the alarm triggers instantly. Before they can get inside, Daz arrives, gun in hand. She threatens them and demands John fix his mistake by arresting Nolan. But John tricks her, knocking her gun to the floor and rushes with Nolan into the secret chamber. And then, surprise, the bishop is already inside and no one has any clue how she got there. John and Nolan scoff, thinking, she's just a woman, we can take her down. But she turns out to be a total ninja, beating them both up, tying them, and walking off with the egg. Moments later, Soto storms in, and we learn the bishop was working with him all along. Her role was to protect the egg from John and Nolan. The next day, they wake up tied in a strange place with the bishop laughing at them. She asks Nolan to tell her where the third egg is, and if he refuses, she will torture John. Nolan gets happy and says this is motivation for him, not to talk. But after some torture on John, Nolan decides to confess and says the egg is hidden in a secret place in Egypt. The bishop and Soto celebrate this information and drink 2 glasses. But of course, the bishop had put drugs in Soto's drink, so she can steal his egg and leave. After a while, Soto wakes up angry and keeps shooting at them, but luckily the only bullet that hits near them cuts the rope they were tied with it. Then the two manage to get out of the place and discover they are in the middle of a bullfighting arena. After getting badly beaten by the bull, they finally escape the arena and hop on a cargo train to get away. John asks Nolan about the location of the third egg. Nolan tells him the story of Rudolf, a close friend of Adolf Hitler, and explains that there were rumors saying he owned the third egg. Rudolf later fled to Argentina and died there, and all his belongings were sold at an auction. Among those belongings was Nolan's father's watch. And that watch has the coordinates that lead them to the egg's location. Then we see them in Argentina, wandering through the jungle looking for the egg, but they can't find anything. John gets frustrated, throws the watch on the ground, and suddenly they hear a strange sound. When they dig, they discover an underground Nazi bunker. Inside, they find a secret vault and use Nolan's father's watch to open it. As soon as they step in, they find the last egg. But unfortunately, the bishop is there too. Before she can shoot them and take the third egg, Das arrives with the police. And honestly, I have no idea how all these people managed to know the egg's location. But Nolan and John have to solve the puzzle first. A shootout breaks out and Nolan escapes with John and the bishop in an old car they find there. At the end of the tunnel, they fall into the water. Finally, Nolan surfaces with the egg, torn between escaping or waiting for John, but in the end, he decides to wait for him. The bishop comes out of the water exhausted and unable to chase them. Nolan celebrates and tells her he beat her and that she's going to jail. But here comes the plot twist. John and the bishop were working together all along. The two of them tricked him just to find out the location of the last egg. Then they tie him to a tree, take the egg, and leave. After that, we see them at the Egyptian businessman's party, handing over the 3 eggs. And honestly, I have no idea why an Egyptian guy would hire Ed Sheeran to sing at his daughter's wedding. Moments later, Das shows up at the wedding. Apparently, she's got some kind of universal visa that lets her enter any place in the world and arrest everyone inside. John and the bishop are enjoying their time on a yacht with the money they got from the Egyptian businessman. But suddenly, Nolan shows up. He tells them he was arrested but managed to escape. He also informs them that the money they took from the Egyptian businessman has been frozen because the man was imprisoned. Now, the 3 of them are broke and must work together on a new mission to make money. Then they escape from the yacht because, of course, Das is coming to arrest them. Das doesn't find them and decides to put their names on the red notice list as the most wanted criminals. And that brings us to the end of our movie.